Nearly an hour after announcing impeachment charges against US President Donald Trump, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi delivered him a victory. After more than a year of deliberations, Democrats have agreed to a new trade deal with Canada and Mexico that will replace the long-standing NAFTA agreement. Pelosi says the Trump administration has met her demands, with Democrats seeking changes to the provisions around the environment, pharmaceuticals and labour. The proposed deal offers more protection for US intellectual property as well as labour rights. It would also provide a 10-year exclusivity period for US pharmaceutical products. But the deal could hit hurdles. Mexican lawmakers are opposing a call for American officials to inspect goods before they're shipped to the US.
There is no question, of course, that this trade agreement is much better than NAFTA. But in terms of our work here, it is infinitely better than what was initially proposed by the administration.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by Jeffrey Tucker in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He's the editorial director at the American Institute for Economic Research. Welcome back to the program, Jeffrey. Well, after dealing President Donald Trump a blow by announcing those impeachment charges, Nancy Pelosi has effectively given him a victory in the form of this new trade deal with Canada and Mexico. Politics aside, though, is this the right move for the United States?
Pelosi says this is better than NAFTA. I wouldn't agree with that at all. That NAFTA was much closer to free trade. This new agreement preserves about 90% of what NAFTA used to be, which is a little surprising given that Trump called it the worst trade deal in human history. So that's the good part. The other 10% is almost entirely terrible. It's the U.S. exporting this high, egregious labor regulations to Mexico. There's all these kind of inspections to make sure it's 70% of cars coming in instead of 62% originate in one of the three countries, which requires a lot of inspections. It's basically an addition of managed trade. I mean, you have to ask yourself, why is it that Pelosi is in favor of this? And the reason is that it acquiesces to many of the Democratic Party's demands. From an economic point of view, this is a very bad precedent. I don't think it's going to somehow crash the economies or anything like this, but it does represent an imposition of a kind of a U.S. imperialism over pharmaceuticals and trade, and it's not going to help American business. I would say it's definitely a step back from where we were headed with NAFTA. In that sense, it represents exactly what both Trump and Pelosi want, which is a managed trade deal. And in that sense, I would say this is a step backwards and very sad.
Interesting. Now, this deal, the USMCA, has been languishing for more than a year, as we know, and could resolve some of the uncertainty around the economy as Donald Trump tries his hand at a second term at the US presidency. How might this approval help Donald Trump in the polls?
I think you've put your finger on it when you said it removes some uncertainty. I mean, that is the good part of this, is that at least it's a codified, legislated deal that business can at least rally around and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And this is much better than this wild uncertainty we've had over the last couple of years with trade. I mean, it was just a few months ago or something. Trump, woke up in the morning and decided we needed higher tariffs against all goods from Mexico, and he tweeted it out, So I hope that there was something about this new deal that at least will get rid of that kind of arbitrary regime. And the thing is, from an economic point of view, right now, American business is ready to go. Everybody's ready to trade, not just with Canada and Mexico, but the whole world. It seems like we're narrowly avoiding recession, and there's going to be a lot of optimism going into the campaign, and Trump will, of course, take credit for it. I don't think that the elimination of the uncertainty and the resulting probably economic gains that can come from that are attributable to any particular aspect of this deal. I mean, there's a lot of terrible things in this deal, but just to get rid of the uncertainty and the wild, arbitrary, tweet-based, trade managed trade dictatorship and endless tariffs and taxes, that alone will be a tremendous relief.
Okay, of course, the Democrats have now detailed the 2 impeachment charges against Trump, accusing him of abuse of power and of obstructing Congress in relation to the allegation that he withheld aid to Ukraine for his own political purposes. Do you think those charges will stick?
I think everybody knows who Trump is, and everybody knew who Trump was when he got elected. So there's nothing about the charges that are surprising. I think people believe them more or less. But whether or not they rise, as they say, rise to the level of impeachment, I don't think so. This is a purely partisan kind of circus that's taking place, which is why, there's nothing surprising happening with this impeachment. Obviously, the Democrats are for it and the Republicans are against it. It's nothing like impeachments past, like the Nixon situation or anything like that. There's an incredible lack of interest on the part of the American people in the goings on with this impeachment stuff, which is a little bit surprising.